Okay, welcome back, everyone. So, African and African ancestry women face a disproportionate risk of maternal mental health challenges, often compounded by systemic inequities such as racial bias, unequal access to healthcare, and social barriers. This next session features a panel of talented individuals who bring diverse expertise and perspective to that discussion. Now I will hand it over to our dedicated social worker and mental health professional, Damali Tilmal, from the Black Infant Health Program, who will guide us through today's panel discussion. Damali.
Thank you so much, Shilpa. I really appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. You are in for a treat. We are so happy that you all have joined us today. For the next portion of the conference, we will hear from a multidisciplinary panel of experts. Our distinguished panelists have a unique mix of professional and personal experiences collectively, and will be able to provide a comprehensive insight into current landscape and solutions to address the gaps. Dr. Vivian L. Tamkin, PhD, is a dual state licensed community-oriented psychologist in California and Wisconsin. Dr. Tamkin holds a PhD in counseling, psychology, and a minor in child clinical psychology from Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. Dr. Tamkin completed a clinical postdoctoral fellowship in child development and infant mental health at the University of Colorado, Denver School of Medicine, as well as T32 Mentored Research Fellowship in Health Disparities at the University of Wisconsin-Madison School of Medicine and Public Health. Dr. Tamkin's qualitative research program systematically examines the lived experiences of racial and emotional socialization, messaging in Black African Americans across the lifespan, specifically in the following areas: African American Black maternal and young child relations, messaging related to emotional health and well-being, and reflective functioning. Her current community-based participatory action research study aims to operationalize reflective functioning through an African American Black maternal lived experience. Let's give it up for her, please. Our next panelist is Miss Theresa Fortune. She is a powerhouse, seamlessly blending her roles as a producer, writer, actress, maternal mental health activist, and founder of Communion with the Community. Her latest project, From the Ashes, is a poignant narrative guiding audiences through the journey of a Black woman overcoming depression to find spiritual rebirth. Beyond her creative endeavors, Theresa is a fervent advocate for health equity, particularly in addressing the crisis of Black maternal mortality. Through her organization, Communion with the Community, she fosters dialogue around mental health and artistic expression, while also spearheading mentorship programs for underprivileged youth in Oakland. Theresa's commitment to storytelling as a tool for social change is rooted in her own experiences as a mother and community leader. Her work serves as a beacon of hope, inspiring resilience and fostering connections in an increasingly disconnected society. That's Miss Theresa. Next, we have Miss Yvonne Maxwell, MSW, LCSW, and she is the eldest child of Wesley and Friedel Maxwell, mother and a social worker. She is one of the founding directors of Ujima Adult and Family Services, and executive director since it began in 1991. The agency provides African-centered behavioral health and support services to children, families, and adults. She received her undergraduate degree and graduate degree in social work from San Jose State University and has been teaching in the School of Social Work at San Jose State since 2001. She is active in the community, focused on issues of inequality, the promotion and development of African-centered services, and the protection of the African community. Ms. Yvonne. Last but definitely not least, Mr. Robert Wilson. Robert Wilson is a health education associate and serves as the Role of Men ROM program coordinator. To my left, I believe, is the Role of Men information, and we want you guys to check out the vision boards of the different programs that are a part of Black Infant Health and Role of Men. He is a one-man show that plans, organizes, markets, and leads the virtual and in-person workshops and one-on-one sessions for his participants. He also provides community presentations for partners to help promote the program. Before joining public health, Robert was a patient care coordinator at Roots Community Health. He first started with us as an Extra Help employee during the pandemic and then became permanent. He's been in public health for about 3 years. That's Robert. So now we'll begin our panel discussion. There will be some questions that the panel will address. And as they mentioned before, please write down your questions on the cards that were presented to you, and also online. We have our lovely ladies, Rania and Sephora, that are monitoring that. So let's dig in. First, how does systematic racism and anti-Blackness impact the psychological safety of birthing people, women of African and African ancestry? And anyone can start, whoever would like to answer that.
Hello. And that's a huge question, but I think a very important one. If we just think about how important culture is to who you are, culture, as going back and culture orders reality, right? It's a huge influence, impact on us understanding ourselves and who we are as people. And so how we do family, how we have relationships, what having a child and bringing a child into the world, and how even as African people, it's a gift. A child is a gift. And when you're doing these important things that help to flourish your people, your community, right? Affirm who you are in an environment that is anti-you at every level of who we are, who you are. Deliberately, I mean, that's what systems of white supremacy are, right? At every level of every aspect of your life, your relationship with each other. And now we're talking specifically here today about bringing a child into the world, creating a child, right? From this tiny seed to a person and being part of a family in an environment that at every level of human activity is attempting to undermine, devalue, destroy you. So it has a huge impact on women in this process of giving birth and birthing. And so I think it's very important, and so happy we're talking about that today. Keep talking about it, and not just talk about it, but actively do things to deal with it and affront it and destroy it.
Thank you, Ms. Yvonne. Anyone else on the panel, please?
Hey, beautiful people. Everyone looks so lovely today. It's a pleasure to be here. Side note, you did a phenomenal job, and I hope to get to know you because you're amazing. In regards to psychological safety or the lack thereof, as a mother who silently suffered with postpartum depression, it was completely avoidable had there been psychological safety. What's interesting is that my OB was Black, but she still had to wear the white coat. And so the white coat represents a system that was designed for me to fall through all the cracks, which really they kind of feel like valleys at this point, and they're packing up. So I think that when I think of psychological safety, I'm reminded of the lack of connectivity between patient and practitioner. Oftentimes, our doctors don't have time to connect, and that's a systematic issue. Oftentimes, they're scribing while trying to diagnose. The level of multitasking is dehumanizing and disrespectful to the entire process, whether you're a birthing person or not. And so a system that's suppressing all of us is going to fail the patient and the practitioner. And I don't believe that psychological safety is something that exists right now. And there's a few factors that kind of thread everything together, one of which is we've dehumanized the process from patient to practitioner. The second thing is, if I tell you that I'm having a mental health crisis, there's a high probability that you're going to dismantle my family and report me to CPS. And the third thing is there just isn't enough time. And I feel like a lot of doctors care, but you don't have time to connect. And the patient is usually going to suffer in the byproducts of your misery as a practitioner. And so when all of these things are factored in and we think about the idea of psychological safety, it just really doesn't exist, and it's not going to exist if we're not attacking the system as a whole, right? So I'm hopeful that until the system changes, which we need to perform like an open heart surgery on the system at this point, because it was designed without a heart, really, or maybe just an implant. We need to implant a heart. Until that happens, I'm hopeful that, even social workers, I'm hopeful that the patient is not just the center of connectivity, but I'm hopeful that you're okay too. Thank you. Because if you're okay, it means that I have permission to tell you that I'm not okay. Yeah. So if you're coming to work miserable, I can feel that energy. Mm-hmm. And if I feel that energy as a patient, I'm less likely to tell you that I'm not okay on top of all of the data that tells me that it's not safe to tell you. So we need the person-to-person connectivity to begin now while we all try to work on the system together. Yeah.
That is so good. Dr. Tamkin or Robert?
Yeah, I want to add just a couple extra thoughts to what's already been said. So in terms of my thinking about how anti-Blackness and systemic racism, these pieces they hijack the nervous system such that an individual they might find themselves not fully able to be present emotionally, spiritually, mentally, for themselves or for that baby. When that happens, there is then a subsequent impact to the baby and their development in utero, as well as when he, she, they are born into the world. When we think about the ways in which birthing persons, women of African and African ancestry have to find ways to navigate structural racism, it is extremely hard. I'm being repetitive. It hijacks and it also compromises sense of self, sense of identity, sense of well-being, and also sometimes sense of self-agency. So what is important is that we are finding ways to interrogate and to dismantle structural racism so that when mamas and babies are going through these months of gestational development together, that individual is able to connect with herself and with that baby before that baby is even born. I just wanted to add that to the discussion.
That was great. Thank you so much, panelists. Thank you. Robert, do you want to add, please?
Yeah, I'm going to get a little bit personal. I grew up with 2 older sisters. I remember when one of my sisters got pregnant, and she was really excited. And then I remember her first doctor's appointment and her coming home and being really sad and depressed. And then for that whole 9 months, I saw a lot of fear in her face. There was a disconnect between, well, we had a good relationship, but there was an obvious disconnect. And every time she would go to the doctor, she'd come home, and I was like, well, you're going to be having a baby. Like, you should be happy. I never went to the appointment, so I didn't know what was going on. Once I was older, I recognized that the only comfort that she was getting was directly from my mom. There was nothing really happening at the doctor's appointments. They were very mechanical. And, there was a very real fear that she might die in childbirth. Seeing that, I know it's anecdotal, but that just lends to everything that's been said here. So,
Thank you, Robert. Panelists, the next question for you is, how does epigenetics affect womb and mental health of birthing people, women of African and African ancestry, before, during, and after pregnancy? Miss Yvonne, I know that's another big one, but you guys please take a shot of it and anyone can respond.
I love epigenetics. I'm not an expert when it comes to it, but I'm actually going to showcase something that is a statement in regards to our stories. As a multidisciplinary artist, my job is to show you our stories and to tell our stories. And so this art piece, the title of her is Woman of the Earth. And you can see that she's kneeling, which represents the sacrifice. You can see that she's also bleeding to hold up the harvest, which is me and my child and my future heir. And she represents the idea of epigenetics and womb health for me. And so I think that, like, my daughter is here, by the way. Aaliyah is amazing, and I love you. Thank you. There are moments in present day where I feel guilty for around the nervous system that my nervous system that was compromised while being pregnant. It's like she doesn't know what I went through, but I know she felt everything. And so my womb health transferred a lot of stories to my child. And my mom is also here. I'm also the ancestor that's going up against unresolved trauma, not just from my mother, but also from her mother. Because while my grandmother was pregnant with her, my little egg was inside of my grandmother in my mom's womb. And so when you think about the energy and the DNA and the stories that are transferred, if someone doesn't become the ancestor to pump the brakes and say, you know what, let me get off this rat race situation and actually address the trauma. Let me make time to cry. Let me make time to heal everything that's been going on from a womb that I never even knew. I never met my grandmother, but I know her. I feel her pain. I can feel her heat. I can feel her brilliance. And so in the world of epigenetics, it really kind of unpacks the stories that we're birthing forward. And it's just, we're oversaturated with so much trauma that it feels impossible to move forward. And so I am hopeful that our system can start to weave in the world of science and to normalize these conversations and to think about the womb health prior to pregnancy. I don't know if I'm going to have another baby or not, but from a cellular level, I've healed so much that the least I can do is birth art for you. The least I can do is birth another film or a production to tell the stories. But if I were to have another baby, it's not that I would feel better because my baby is perfect right now, but because I know because I lived through the trauma while being pregnant with my child, meaning I didn't have stable housing. There are certain points where I didn't have running water. My electricity was cut off. My milk dried up. So because of what my daughter went through before she was even born, that's what has really required me to become a full-time mom. Business is my part-time job. Motherhood is my full-time job because that's the only way that I can give her the tools that I know that she needs prior to her even discovering the problem. So epigenetics, again, is a really important subject. And I think that we need to start providing tools for all birthing people prior to, so that when they walk into it, they have the tools to address the wounds that came before them.
It's really good. Thank you so much, Theresa. Anyone else on the panelists want to attack that one?
I'm not sure I want to follow Theresa. I'm not sure. In all seriousness, though, I think something that is coming to mind for me, it really does dovetail nicely to what you were saying, Theresa. I cannot not hold in mind the importance of intergenerational transmission processes that occur and are occurring with respect to epigenetics. So with respect to the interaction between gene and environment and the interplay of these two aspects of life. Before, during, and after, I think not minimizing, I think it starts with increasing the awareness of the impact of the lives of others who have lived before us, those upon whose shoulders we stand. I also think that it's important to be thinking about how we are going to not just rewrite, but add to the history and the legacies that folks of African and African ancestry have been exposed to and are still living and breathing within their internal nervous systems and within our DNA. I think those pieces are also important to continue to hold in mind. I don't know how profound that is, or it was coming to mind for me as you were talking, Theresa. Right.
Thank you, Dr. Tamkin. Miss Yvonne?
To add to what my sisters are saying, I think I always remember the story from a colleague and very good friend, Sister Christina from Cameroon. And she shared, so we have all the scientific knowledge and the hormones of stress and just the history and the things that we carry. And then there's the cultural knowingness over years, right, that many people have. And she would always say that at home where she comes from in Cameroon, you never say anything negative, harmful, stressful, once you know this woman is carrying a baby, even before, like the prepping, right? You don't bring that around the mom, and that the community makes sure that the woman is comfortable and is not stressed, and we come to help so that as she's having this baby and the child is developing, that the baby is going to be healthy and strong and contribute to the community. And that's the strength in community. So that I'm sure if she went to where she lived and her community where she grew up, maybe not talk about epigenetics, or they wouldn't talk about stress hormones or all of that. And that's that other level of knowingness that you just don't do that. And then we look at all the ways in our society, and we've talked about that we absolutely do all of that, right? To make it difficult, and of course it affects the mental and physical health of the child and the mother and the environment, right? Even after pregnancy. So the wisdom of people hundreds and hundreds of years ago who know, and us, I guess, getting back to acknowledging that and holding that and then practicing it.
Thank you so much. Robert, did you want to add anything? Okay, well, that's okay. Robert, that's okay, because this next one is for you. And of course, we want the other panelists to respond as well. But to Robert, I think this one is a really good one. What education, information do fathers need to support their partners in a birthing situation? It's a pretty long one. Also, a part of that is what barriers do they face? What is the responsibility of the healthcare providers in light of systematic racism to ensure inclusion?
Well, I think the main obstacle is knowing where to find resources. I think a lot of dads want to be involved but have no idea where to even find, like, they have no idea of that birthing classes even exist, for instance. So having resources more readily available, that's going to be one thing that's going to help. Understanding what is actually happening in those birthing classes, taking part in them, coming up with birthing plans, understanding what your partner is going to need in the delivery room, so that you can advocate when she's in pain or she can't speak. And then as far as what the doctors and the medical facility needs to take into account is that, we're going to be emotional a lot of the time when these things are happening. Treat us like human beings. That's what we are. There's the inherent bias that comes with fathers in general, and then there's people of color who are treated much differently in a lot of the medical field, and those are definite obstacles that it's not our work to do. It's the doctors, it's the nurses, it's the people who are actually supposed to be taking care of us, and in a lot of cases aren't, which is why there's a disparity. I think it's introspect as far as they're concerned. We can tell them, until the moon falls out of the sky, but it's not going to make a difference if they don't make any changes. But yeah, I think birthing classes are very important. As I said, understanding what your partner needs, even after the fact. How to support them. During breastfeeding. Knowing what her tells are when she's uncomfortable, so that you can step in and help in any kind of way that's possible. I think those are all things that I think a lot of guys would love to do, but have no idea where to start. So I think there should just be more classes and more outreach to fathers overall.
I love that, Robert. I really think it's so important for the dads to also have activities. We do a lot of focus around our moms, but we know that it's really important for the dads to also have that support as well. And I don't know if people know this, but fathers do tend to also deal with postpartum depression. Mm-hmm. We're learning more about that as we go. And I do want to hear from other panelists if you want to address that question, please.
I'm going to pass it on, but I just wanted to say really quick. In the workshops that I do, I have a co-facilitator, Rashid, here. He works at Roots Community Health, and he's actually he actually teaches our birthing classes there. So I make it a point so that all of the new dads, or even dads who might have already had kids that are having new kids, know that these resources are available.
Thank you, Robert. Theresa?
That was a great answer. There's two things that come to mind, like listening to your introduction. Thank you for all that you do. But the problem that I feel while listening to what you do is why are you a one-man show? Let's just be frank about it. The county has a bigger budget, and if you don't, you need to make a bigger budget so that he has a team. So a part of the issue is that we have all these resources, but there's never a good marketing strategy. We have all these programs, and we don't have enough partnerships. So we talk about the fatigue of our physicians. We talk about the fatigue when it comes to advocacy, because I'm disrespectfully tired. We talk about the fatigue of someone that's saying, like, I'm the only person in this line of work, and we do have a facilitator. That's not good enough. It's not good enough. And we should have a bigger budget so that we can do a better job. Otherwise, you're literally wasting your money because no one knows about it. Why is he the only person that's meeting with our fathers? You know, so I have an issue with the lack of marketing because now it now feels intentional. So for me, I'm a filmmaker, and so I've documented my own mental health journey for about 10 years. And so I'm a case study on Front Street in front of everyone. And so as an artist, my job is to come in and to study the glitches and to build the bridge. The main bridge that I am is take the program, find the people, become the marketing launching pad by hosting events. And that's what I do, and we need more of that for our fathers. I have a guest here, Kiazi Malongo, if you could raise your hand for just a moment. He has incredible resources that he's actually financing himself until we can find grants and other things to amplify what our fathers need. I think another problem is, you know, in the birthing process, if something is wrong, let's say I don't have a doula or I don't have a midwife, I didn't have either one of those. I have serious sound sensitivity, by the way. Can we address that? I don't know where it's coming from.
Guillermo?
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. Uncle, we love you. I just have a neurological difference with certain sounds. Okay. So the thought is, you know, if I don't have a doula or a midwife, which I didn't have either one of them, my husband at the time should have been able to advocate for more things. However, because he's a Black man, he's actually a threat. Mm-hmm. So I can't say anything really, because you're probably not going to hear me anyway, per the data. And then my husband or my partner, he's not really welcome into the space, because if he gets upset, we got a major problem. Somebody escort him outside of the room. Mm-hmm. And so I think that we need more, we need to educate our fathers as though they are the doulas, even if they're not certified. Because if, let's say, the family can't afford this, that, or the other, my partner should be equipped to know how to communicate to the doctor, to know what signs to look for, to be able to just really speak and advocate on my behalf, and to have a birthing plan. And so those are the two things that really, really come to mind. And I'm, you know, as a maternal health advocate, my conversation is beginning to feel very impartial without talking about the paternal side. You know, for every birthing person that doesn't make it off of the birthing table because the system failed them again and again and again, we now have a single father in the world to navigate single fatherhood while also experiencing grief.
Yes, yes.
So we're forgetting that, well, is that connected to all of these like social complications? We have all these young men and young women that are misguided because maybe they were left with a single parent, whether it be a mother or a father, to navigate the world. And, oh yeah, by the way, you're Black, so you're already at some type of disadvantage. So as much focus as we are very focused on the maternal side, but if we don't help him out, we are failing all families. The dismantling of our families are because it's not that we don't have enough resources, we don't have enough visibility when it comes to what is available. And his team, I don't work for the county, so I can say it. There's that. But if this man continues to be a one-man show, you are failing us.
Yes.
And that's all that I can say.
That was really good. Yes.
I wanted to add something really quickly to what they've both said, is that so we're understanding the issues, but I'm just thinking actively, and we come to these conferences and we gather more information and more PowerPoints and all of that. But then how do we change the behavior, right? So we understand that the father, the partner, the male in the African community in North America is been purposefully, when it comes to family, from the beginning, pushed aside, not invited, purposefully by policies and practice. We talk about famous social service practice, right? If there's a man in the house, we're not going to provide. We're not going to employ you so that you can provide for your family. And now your family's not going to get any help or support if you're there. So these things are in policies in place actively. And so over history and learned, and it's kind of almost this behavioral thing for African men to step back, get out of the way, in order for, as a way of protecting the family. But reports show, and statistically, African men are involved in family and with their children at a higher level than any other group of people.
It's beautiful.
And just because as a system you don't see them, it's because that's how we've learned to survive, to stay in the shadows. But if you ask women and if you ask, families, our men are there, right? So how do we then begin to change that behavior, right? Because it's almost, as providers or health providers, the expectation is that he's not there. And when he does show up, all of a sudden, what's going on here? This is unusual. It's unusual to you, or it's unusual, right, in the story that you've heard about us, but it's not to us. Yes. And so making room so that we don't have to continue that hiding behavior, so that our men, our partners, can be fully there for us and not in the shadows or on the side. And that's something that a behavior change that professionals can do actively today.
Thank you, Ms. Yvonne. Dr. Tamkin, did you want to add?
Yes. So I think that we're speaking to also implicit bias. And so implicit, explicit, all it's right. It's just, it's there. And how is it that we begin to think about shifting that, changing that for providers when fathers are coming into the appointments? And how is that provider, like, how did that automatic thought, that automatic assumption come into their mind that the father of this baby might not come with the mother to that visit? And when that father shows up and the look upon that provider's face is one of shock, that's about the provider. And then how that provider finds themselves responding to that father's presence, that is something that the provider is needing to work on for themselves. Yet it becomes, or it starts to feel as though it's about the mother and the father in that moment at that visit.
So good.
Oh, I heard some noise over there too. So where does that start? Perhaps it starts through the training programs. Perhaps it starts thinking about who is providing the training, providing supervision or lack thereof, supervision, training, et cetera, right? And who also are in these particular environments and learning and training spaces that look like the patient that we're talking about. How is it that in 2025, we're talking about this? And how do we begin to outreach young folk who can then be elevated up into these spaces, who can then provide the care that the moms and the babies and the young folk and the fathers need, the families all need? Where does that come from? How can we make that happen? Those are huge questions, and in this moment, I don't have any particular answers to those questions. However, I am inviting all of us to think together about this and think about what might be that first step in making some semblance of change. Something. And maybe this is the first step. Maybe this is it. Being here today in person and online. A next step might be making a phone call to one of us and or to someone in the audience to say, you know what, folks? We are beyond tired of this. As my grandma would say, my big mama would say, yeah, I'm tired of this. And I can't walk no more. I can't talk no more. We got to change some things. And how can we begin to do that? I want to go back to your question also in terms of fathers, in
Yes,
terms of
please.
postpartum depressive mood disorder symptoms, et cetera. I think one thing that could be very helpful is for us to be thinking differently about what it means for a male individual person or a male identifying person to even experience depressive symptomatology. Is it even okay? What has society said to us about young boys and men with emotions?
Yes.
That it's not supposed to be okay. And then when a young man, when a little boy has emotions, a lot of times he is told, stop crying. You can't do that. That's not okay. You're gonna get beat up or something like that. So then if those are internalized messages that that little boy has taken in at a very young age and then keeps hearing that over the course of his lifetime, how is he to know that it's okay to express his emotions? And then he has a baby coming into the world with his birthing partner. How is he to know that it's okay to tell his baby, a male baby, that it's okay to cry? It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel down. And there are ways, there are people that you can turn to get some help and support. So I think changing the ways in which we think about and we talk about mental health in general, within the African and African ancestry communities, and also gender-wise as well.
Dr. Tamkin, that was beautifully said. And that actually is, yes, please, applause. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Panelists, you're doing a great job. I think
Damali.
we have time. Yes, please.
I want to say one more
Yes,
thing.
of course.
So I want to address what she was just saying. So Dr. Tamkin, that's part of the work that I do actually is to help young men in general, be able to express their emotions in a constructive way. But the reason that I grabbed the microphone, I just wanted to say that even though I'm a one-man show, I have a lot of support from NFP, MCAH, Black Infant Health helps me a lot. I mean, I'm here at the PEI conference talking about this stuff, so I do get some support. Yeah.
Start.
Thank you, Robert, and panelists as well, everyone. You're doing a great job. So the next question, and I believe, Dr. Tamkin, you started trying to touch on it, but what effective strategies must be taken to bring about change? And I would love to hear from all of you, please.
You're so classy, by the way. One of the strategies, but I'm still going to stand on what I said. One of the strategies is not just supporting, but just think about marketing and think about how to market and consider a budget, because the resources are an absolute waste if we don't know about it. Had I known about Black Infant Health, I think y'all were founded in 1987, 86, 1986.
89,
89?
1989.
1980.
Thank you. I'm 38. So Black Infant Health has been around for a very long time. Had I known about Black Infant Health and had the hospital required a social worker to check in with me before I was discharged, I probably wouldn't have ever had to make a film. I probably would have had a lactation consultant, because the social determinants that I was dealing with literally dried and cut off my milk flow. So I couldn't feed my child. And that was the onset of my postpartum depression. My postpartum was so bad that I contemplated suicide, which is what my film is about, which is why I'm even sitting here right now. And so if we don't amplify the resources by really thinking carefully how we want to market and making sure that the marketing material is attractive to the recipient, meaning does it look like that person? Or is it just some flyer that's got clip art on it? You know, can we hear, is there texture? Are there more films out there that we can put, Santa Clara County and I, we've done a couple of film screenings, super grateful. But we need to continue to be intentional around sharing the resources and how we're choosing to present that. And again, had I known about Black infant health, I wouldn't have had postpartum depression. I wouldn't have been, sitting in my kitchen contemplating taking my life. And so every social worker, every nurse, not only am I hopeful that you're taking care of yourself so that you have the mental capacity to actually think through some of these moments so that you can share the resources. So one, take care of yourself, but two, go outside of the conferences and engage with partners, community partners, so that when you find a mom or a father that's in an active suffering, you can refer out. We don't need you to create from scratch anymore. There's a lot. I've never heard of your organization before. I have a brother that lives in Santa Clara, and he is going through a lot. I'm going to send him your way, And so there's no competition or there's no conflict of interest when it comes to care. So
Yes.
this county, talk to this county. And just, I encourage you again and again, and I know I'm a little long-winded, but had someone referred one resource to me and my family, I don't believe I ever would have contemplated taking my life. Please remember that. Please remember that statement. Because one conversation can change a life. One resource can save a family.
Thank you so much, Ms. Theresa. I really appreciate that. I want to give the panelists just a quick, we have to get to the Q&A section. They have me on a time schedule here. But I want you guys to please have just last thoughts before we go into the Q&A, please, quickly.
So in terms of the question regarding effective strategies that we can take to create change, I'm going to say something that might be kind of radical or outrageous. I feel the pressure. Oh my goodness. One thing, let's stop saying cultural competency.
Yeah.
Let's stop saying that, right? And so as I think about cultural competency, it's, to me, others have different ideas about this. It implies that there is an end point. It implies that we have amassed mastery of something or over something. Folks, we can't do that, right? So let's change the language in how it is that we think about engaging with the clients and the patients that we see. Let's engage in anti-oppressive, anti-racist approaches to the work that we do. Some folks might also even say culturally humble or cultural humility, cultural awareness, cultural sensitivity, etc. The things that involve us as an individual provider increasing awareness of our power, positionality, privilege, and etc. And recognizing our biases and asking ourselves, how am I walking in my biases, enacting my biases? Am I then therefore engaging in schemas of stereotypes? Am I perpetuating X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3? Let's start changing all of those aspects and ways that we talk about the work that we do. To me, that's one of many strategies. That's one line of many strategies. Okay, that's my radical speech.
Thank you, Dr. Tamkin. Robert or Miss Yvonne, do you guys have any last thoughts before we go into Q&A?
Just adding to that, to what she was saying, that means that we're changing our behavior in a pluralist county like Santa Clara County. We could all be doing that every day because there's people that we're working with that don't look like us, don't have the same cultural center. So, I was going to do a quote, disorientation, right, is part of transformation. So let's all get disoriented yesterday and understand that I'm uncomfortable, I'm confused, I don't know what to do. That's a good sign. That means that transformation is on the way.
That's so good. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm sure there are some questions in the audience. Does anyone have a question Yes, please.
Okay.
I have two. I'm trying to decide. Okay. So, one is, can you all talk about advocacy that has been done to interrupt the over-involvement of police and DCFS in the Black birthing process? And then, well, maybe I'll stop there because my other question is very different. And I asked that to say, what's next? So what do we continue to do from there?
As an abolitionist, everybody join the movement.
Mike's off. Okay, I think we're going to take a question. Okay, please. I'm sorry, Miss Theresa.
That's a really complex question. I don't really have an answer to that, but intuitively, the thing that comes to mind is community. Breaking I'll talk about my Uncle Sam for just a moment. When I was in the 3rd grade, I had an uncle who committed suicide. He jumped off of the Bay Bridge, and I remember my mom picking me up from school, and I was just like, what do you mean? What is suicide? And I remember when we went home, I don't recall anyone ever really talking about it, or normalizing our tears or grief, or I think we were judging him even through our grief. Like, why would you do such a thing? We're the Fortune family. It was crazy. And so that comes to mind because when I thought about taking my life, I felt so much shame. And I didn't want to tell anyone what was going on. And so these two examples come to mind because in the moment, in the thought, if my community, if there was more visibility, if my neighbor, if I could have called my neighbor, or if I would have had permission to tell someone that I wasn't okay, because let's just say the option was to not take my life, and I just had a mental health crisis, and I went outside and I was just losing my mind. Someone probably would have called the cops. But if we start dismantling the shame around what we're actually going through, we leverage what's going on through the world of humility and humanity, and we can actually touch the neighbor and say, you know what, are you okay?
Yes.
So if there's more of this going on, there's less of this going on.
Yes.
And so that's something that we can do right now, is to be a better neighbor, to be a better coworker, check in on your people. In the world of healthcare, there are a lot of physicians that are also committing suicide. And so sometimes it's not going to be your neighbor. Sometimes it's going to be the person in the cubicle across from you. And so bring back the core of who we are to the forefront so we can stop calling the cops, because we don't need cops to police our emotions and to manage our moments. We know how to be people. We know how to love each other. And love isn't always talked about because it's not a metric. It isn't something that you can technically measure, so that's what comes to mind. And I'm hopeful that is the call to action, is to come back into community, go back into the village, and to be proactive and to not wait for the crisis. Because in that moment in which I thought about doing what I wanted to do, I felt alone because I hadn't, and my neighbors, they were there, but it was planted in me from the 3rd grade that my family would be ashamed of me if I did something like that. And unfortunately, that was one of the reasons that I did not take my life, is because I felt the guilt of shame while still alive.
Does anyone on the panel want to add to that? Thank you so much, Ms. Theresa, for sharing your story.
Would you mind saying your question again, please?
Yeah, I didn't want to gloss over what Sister Theresa had shared earlier in the panel around during the labor and delivery process, feeling shame around sort of communicating how you're feeling. And so I'm asking if one of the barriers to Black women and folks that are giving birth is fear of police, fear of involvement of DFCS, what conversations, actions, advocacy has happened to negotiate that a bit differently?
Great question. So I don't know that I can speak to specifically to what it is that you're asking. I'm going to speak in a global sense in terms of I think it involves taking a look at the policies that have been embedded, like the white supremacist policies and practices that have been embedded historically in institutions. And then how is it that that folks, coalitions want to get together and start thinking about, well, how can we make shifts? How can we make changes? And who are in these places that can also help along the way with making shifts and changes that are meeting the community in different kinds of ways, in ways that are actually helpful and not harmful. So that's how I'm thinking about your question. I hope that answers your question in some way. Okay. And you had a second question, you said? Are you sure? Okay.
Okay, I think we have time to take a question from our online audience. Rania?
Yes, we have one question here in the chat. Again, thank you so much, Damali, and thank you so much to all the panelists. This was wonderful. Just wanted to say here, the question is, what are some things the nurses did right in supporting you all during the perinatal period, Mr. Wilson included here with his partner? Or what are some things you wish the nurses would have done if there were no positives?
Anyone?
Before I got up here, I promised, like my mom, that I would talk less. Just can't help it. I hope I'm making sense, by the way. My heart is really involved.
You're doing great.
My OB again was black, but she was wearing a white coat. And so I didn't feel the psychological safety, again, to tell her what was really going on. I think that my baby's here. You know, they did a good job delivering my child. Actually, her father, oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The birthing process was incredible. Her father actually delivered her and got credit because he was in paramedic school, which was crazy. So that experience was, and the nurses did a great job. The thing that I wish would have been different was there wasn't a touch point with a social worker to talk about resources. That's the one thing that probably would have changed my entire journey. The one thing that my doctor did right was, my child is healthy. She's here. I feel like I had a good experience birthing, but it's always the before and after. Like, they just focus on the baby, which she deserves all the focus. She's an incredible baby. But there's still a mom and there's still a dad. And I also share that, her dad was in medic school, so he was actually medically inclined, but he still couldn't see the signs. So I'm hopeful that social workers can be a little bit more involved. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So we are at time. And I know that there's other questions, and I know there's questions online, but we do have to go on. Please, everyone, give a round of applause to our beautiful panelists, please. Thank you so much. I feel like I learned so much just from being here amongst the panelists. Just beautiful, rich conversation. We will now take a lunch break. And any other?
Yeah, just give a round of applause for a panelist as well as Damali.
Thank you. Thank you.